This is Modern Gaming Culture. This series will attempt to highlight the phenomenon of PC, console, and mobile gaming and bring to light all of its phenomenal aspects. Let's take a dive together into the world of modern gaming and take apart its structure. Now, here's your host, Rotimi Osagi. All right, this is Modern Gaming Culture. This is episode 17, Modern Gaming Culture. And last episode, I did a sort of like reeling in for, you know, kind of debriefing for, coming out of, doing that workflow series. Um, and this episode, um, sort of want to continue with that theme. Um, and sort of elaborate on kind of, and also I did sort of a teaser for deck profile series on this platform as well, and I was kind of going for sort of just kind of preparing for a more direct reach as opposed to a more indirect reach, like how I've been doing it. Um, you know, generally, when it comes to promotion and stuff like that, um, people sort of tend to believe that um, you know you're gonna reach people um, outside of your local area more aggressively first before you start reaching people in your local area. Uh, and probably this comes from sort of kind of um, relying on novelty, right? As a way of, um, you know, um, reaching people, right? Um, but, that's actually just the very definition of scamming people. You really understand sort of what that entails, right? Using novelty to reach people, right? That's essentially what scamming is, right? Um, in so many words, right? Um, and so, for preparing for reaching people, I wanted to sort of, tease that, um, as much as I'm going to be doing, right, planning on doing a lot of heavy material on this platform, um, you know, again, I've emphasized and stressed, in the first few episodes, how I really want to, um, you know, um, make the material very lighthearted to start off, right? So as not to scare people off, right? Um, I'm not unfamiliar with internet publishing, and so with some of the internet publishing I've done, with VGC videos and TCG videos, when it's very competitive, you know, material, right? That's always going to be heavy, right? And so, being as that was basically how I started doing internet publishing, you know, um, it's not something that's very familiar to me when it comes to doing more lighthearted material. And so I've tried to tread a very thin line when it comes to, um, you know, um, teasing stuff, and priming people for material I'm going to be doing, right? And so, um, yeah, that's something that I'm going to try to continue doing, right? so that I'm not scaring people off, right? And so yeah, just for preparing for reaching people more locally, I wanted to start, basically teasing stuff and stuff like that, right? So you know, generally how reach works is generally, you know, um, you generally will have people in the local area that you are trying to um bring together, right? Um, so that you can prepare them, right, for which is basically just like horizontal integration, right? Um, and as opposed to vertical integration, right? Um, and so yeah, basically preparing people, right, so that you can basically just branch out, right? And so um, I just want to make it very clear that's sort of how I approach, you know, um, promotion, right, through a model of horizontal integration, right? And so that's something where really just recognizing, right, you know, and also just understanding, okay, I'm grabbing a lot of my analysis. I'm not, watching, K dramas or, following, um, Japanese pop stars or, K pop stars, or following, Japanese artists, right? Or Japanese composers, musicians, right? Um, I'm really trying to gauge, the situation from where I'm at, right? And so as a result, that means I should probably just cater to where I'm at, right? And so um, that's basically, kind of how I've been trying to approach Reach, right? And so for preparing for that, right, been trying to, tease little stuff so that, when people start to, look for, you know, my platforms, right? Um, they are, you know, um, ready, right, for what lies ahead in terms of um, uh, engaging my, engaging my work, right? So um, that's sort of where I want to sort of steer things, right? So I did the tease with deck profiles, and you know, I've then still been playing a lot of League of Legends, and the new TFT set just came out. Sort of like set one all over again, which is pretty interesting. Um, and that's generally kind of how I've been spending my free time. And so um, it's not something where I really want to, incorporate that into sort of a lot of this promotional stuff, which I'm going to be doing for the next few episodes, right? Because I basically just did, the League of Legends Workflow series, right? Which I feel like is very powerful for sure. Because generally, when you find people who are trying to play League of Legends, trying to climb, etc., issues that they find is that they're not really understanding kind of what people are doing, right? Especially considering, you know, the people who were playing League of Legends 15 years ago, most of them are not playing anymore, or they're either playing TFT or they're playing, feature game modes, or they're playing like normals, right? They're not playing on the ranked server, and so um, that series was sort of for people who want to play ranked, right? Who were maybe playing 10 years ago, right? Have something to sort of whet their appetite, so that when they enter, they're not feeling stranded, right? And so that generally kind of what was the inspiration for that series, right? And so when it comes to really engaging sort of League of Legends, the League of Legends community, right, and sort of the people who are playing League of Legends right now. It's not something that I want to necessarily spend time on, right, in earnest. And so, that's something I'm going to put on the side, right? Um, and regionals coming up soon, about a month. And so, um, you know, with people getting ready for regionals and stuff like that, I think it's appropriate that, I prepare people for, you know, um, Pokemon related content that I want to do um, on this channel, right? And so, yeah, kind of just want to sort of do a bit of interfacing, I think, for this episode, right? Um, yeah, so as to prepare for people that, I'd want to be reaching, right, on a more local level, right? Um, just to kind of go on a tangent a little bit here. Um, you know, the internet, right, and its connectivity, right, has really enabled for a lot of very a lot of very sinister um, you know, dialectical distortions um to really emerge, right? Um, and so, you have issues where, particularly with stuff like COVID, right? How, COVID sort of just shook the global economy for, essentially like 2 or 3 years, right? Depending on who you ask, right? And um, now with people sort of like recovering, right, sort of from that shakeup, trying to sort of get back on their feet again, get a lot of very strange characters really visiting, you know, um public places, right? Um and just really making a ruckus, right? People generally just, lashing out on people um who they, believe um have to put up with their bullshit, right? Um for gamer culture, it's no sweat off our backs, right? Because, um gaming culture, especially modern gaming culture, really trains you in handling panic attacks. And so when you have um, characters, right, really enter in public spaces, right, and then making sort of unrealistic demands from you, for gaming culture, you kind of just shrug it off, right? Um, but especially in areas where gamer culture doesn't hasn't really been able to permeate, right? You get a lot of you know disarray, right? From not really understanding how to basically put these people in their place, right? Because gamer culture should have collapsed with how much of how much of a thread is really holding it together, right? Um, and it's just because of how resourceful people in game culture are that it hasn't really you know collapsed, right? But if you want to really understand stuff like, for example, internet radio, something that I really harped on the first few episodes, and how much of a hit it took from the censorship wave and then the subsequent pandemic, right? That's not something that's necessarily been was able to sort of weather the storm, right? And so you had such a you know sea of emotions really sweeping away the talent pool that was emerging through internet radio. Um, so, um, with gaming culture, really trying to make sure that, the subject stays on gaming culture, right? Not really able to explore that through gaming culture, right? Um, which is why I think, something like a gaming culture um, related um, internet radio broadcast, such as the one that I'm attempting to put together through modern gaming culture, is so critically important to um, reuniting that audience that was being brought together through an organic emergence of um, the internet radio profession, which is a mouthful. Um, so I think I'm just gonna leave it there for the former part of this episode, to sort of let you digest that. Um, so this has been Modern Gamer Culture. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you.